Today, we're going to be looking at, as I'm told, the right pronunciation is Çatalhüyük, which I always call as Catalhoyuk. Now, this site itself is a location that I've mentioned quite a number of times. If I mention Stonehenge every other week, I mention Çatalhüyük every week. Now, one thing we're going to do today is we're going to rip up the textbook of periods to do with Neolithic and Mesolithic. We're going to rip all that up. We're also going to today, as of today, the Roman period, it has no meaning. And the reason why I'm saying that is last week we were looking at Karnak. And when we were looking at Karnak, I was saying that the stones at Karnak were probably there around 7,000 years ago. And if we go with 7,000 years ago, that puts the stones at Karnak in the Mesolithic period. Now, they didn't build stone monuments like that in the Mesolithic period. They built them in the Neolithic period. And when the stones were being erected at Karnak and in all the other monuments, there was agriculture. But that was in the Mesolithic period. And we're told that agriculture didn't really arrive until the Neolithic period. So in other words, that's all nonsense. And when we look at Catalhoyuk or Çatalhüyük, we look at the rule book being thrown out the window. So we've got an urban area, a settlement with all the trappings of a culture that is far advanced of ours 9,500 years ago. The other rule book we're going to chuck up is BC and AD today as well, just for this week anyway, to make things easier. So this figure behind me, we've discussed this individual quite a lot. And my notes give various different interpretations, but it's a minor thing to do with Çatalhüyük. In fact, when you look at Çatalhüyük, most of the information about Çatalhüyük tells us of a site, a landscape that was egalitarian. In other words, it didn't have kings and queens. It didn't have a ruling class. It didn't have an aristocracy. It didn't care much for main set religion. And when we look at Çatalhüyük, a site, a big community, all living alongside each other, existing for over 1,000 years, and between 5,000 and 10,000 people living in one spot. So we're talking about 9,000 years ago. So what was happening 9,000 years ago in Britain? Well, the total population of Britain back then was around no more than about 5,000. And all of those lived at one location at Çatalhüyük. The other thing as well is most of Britain was covered in trees. Çatalhüyük was in the Fertile Crescent with loads of other civilizations around them. So if you want to look at all the advances that we see with Çatalhüyük, most of those advances are not being even met or seen for about 3,000 or 4,000 years in Britain. And when we look at the first proper urban, proper settlements in Britain around 2,500 years ago, this is 9,000 years ago that we're talking about Anatolia in Turkey. So this is by far something very different. But in fact, it's very much like the Yaman culture. It's very much like little bits that we've seen with Karnak. And strangely enough, when I decide to do these topics, I don't do them in any pattern. I decide that we're going to do that one this week and this one that week and whatever. And it happens that way. And with somebody that's meant to be massively into their Romans, I don't think we've ever mentioned them for months. So Çatalhüyük. So what we need to do is look at some nice images. Now, this image on in front of you portrays art that could easily be referred to as thousands of years earlier, or in fact, if you want to compare this is very similar art to the art that we see with Egypt and the Libyan frontier, with the cave, with the cave of the swimmers. And it's very similar looking art, but then again, it's the type of art that they wish to create. Now, this itself is art that is over 9,000 years old, painted within a house, Now, if we want to think about houses, we do have some evidence of houses in Britain 9,000 years ago, but they're like 1 or 2 houses in the middle of nowhere. At Hoyk, Starcar a little bit later, and these are not massive settlements. These are not massive urban areas, which we've actually getting here. And the level of archaeology that we do see here is second to none. And there's lots of portable bits of art, like this figure and like the figure behind us. Now, it was shot across the bow time today. What does this figure and this figure represent? It obviously represents a mothered goddess. And I start to say, why? Oh, yeah, because it's a woman. All right, then, if you've got a guy sat there with a huge penis, it represents a male god, doesn't it? Oh, yes, it does. No, it doesn't. There's no writing on any of this. In fact, these figures are so odd that it fits in with the landscape of Çatalhüyük. The other thing as well is that must be said is that even though we get really urban evidence at this site 9,500 years ago, if you've noticed the dates are changing every single time I open my mouth, it's not surprising because I actually want to say 10,000, but I'm not. But if you want to compare this with the site of Göbekli Tepe, Göbekli Tepe itself is a locality that is 2,000 or 3,000 years older than this site. But people can argue that the radiocarbon dating evidence that the archaeologists have provided from the site is neither accurate or scientifically plausible. But what is accurate and scientifically plausible is the evidence from Çatalhüyük. So we've got wonderful, actually the radiocarbon dates give the site a much earlier date than, yes. So what I'd like to do is we got this figure in front of us twice now, and me. And I would like to start by reading out a little ditty. Ever since the 1960s, this site of Çatalhüyük is something that paints a settlement of a labyrinth of mud brick houses, not all interconnected, they're back to back. So basically the lanes and the links are actually on the surface. And back in the 1960s, they were thinking that this site was a really old site, but they didn't have the radiocarbon dating that we've got today. Radiocarbon dating back then was still in its infancy. And I do believe I've just tried to join Bill to the group. What we can say over the past 2 decades is that new archaeological excavation evidence has been taking the frontiers of under the sand in this site even further. What we do find is the intriguing conundrums of what the site is about. The conundrum being, 1, how was a site like this organized? A sizable site like this organized, how was it organized? Now that is a good point. A vast site like this, who organized it? Where are the kings and religion and controlling peoples to organize it?
I'm in.
There's no evidence. Hello, welcome. There's no evidence to say that. There's no evidence to actually say that, you know, there's any kind of control or any kind of structure. So this is what we're starting to think about. To date, zero evidence has been found for public buildings or central authority. So egalitarian, illiberty, and all the rest of it. Added to all this, the theoretical questions comes a glut of gorgeous archaeology in an artistic, in a cultural, in whatever form you wish to find. This site itself has wall paintings over 9,000 years old, as I've already mentioned. Now, again, moving on a little bit further, this site itself has gone through 2 phases. The first phase is an excavation in the 1960s where archaeology disappeared, and archaeological excavations since the 1990s to the present date. So many scientists are involved in the archaeological excavations at Çatalhüyük that we're getting so much data, it's going to take decades and decades to put everything together that we know about today, let alone any other work that's been undertaken in the future. So the Turkish, being a very, very poor country, not loving or having any time of day for their history or archaeology, sounding extremely patronizing, love this site. They care for it very deeply, and they invite foreign archaeologists to the site. They put a shelter over it. You know, they really put a lot of funding into understanding this site, because Çatalhüyük is not just Turkey's Stonehenge or ancient Egypt's Great Pyramids. It's more than that. It's much more than that. It's more important than Stonehenge. It's more important than the Giza pyramids. It's everything. And the archaeology there is so well preserved. Sod Pompeii, right? Put it on par with Thera on Santorini, but with a little bit more information. Walls of buildings still standing 2 or 3 meters in height, like some of the Yamon sites that we were looking at. And yes, we do have really good evidence in Japan. I can't doubt that. And unfortunately, what happened in the 1960s, 1965, there was a dispute between the British archaeologists and the Turkish authorities, and he was kicked out. He was banned. So the archaeological excavations were left open, and unfortunately, they were not covered up. So what we're talking about is, and just mentioned, Bill, it's very good for you to join us, and you haven't missed a lot, except Anne going on about some very strange things. So there's what we have is Çatalhüyük. Yes, this is why I call it Catalhoyuk, but it's Çatalhüyük apparently. There's Göbekli Tepe. Now, interestingly enough, the red ones indicate archaeological sites that we do know are active 9,500 years ago. So 9,500 years ago, active archaeological sites, buildings, structures, all the rest of it. Now, if that's the case, you don't suddenly put up a building in the middle of a field and say, right, I've invented a building. It's likely that people are living in this way in regards to this wonderful fertile crescent for thousands of years before we ever come across anything like Çatalhüyük or anything like the archaeological walls of Jericho or anything like anything, you know, we do see that this is very rich. And the other thing that must be mentioned, two-pointed, is this site Shenandoah. The name Shenandoah will be popular in regards to Neanderthal evidence tens of thousands of years earlier. So people continue to live at Shenandoah, and this is a very massively important site 9,500 years ago. The word tell refers to mounds or locations where people live. Cattle basically means water course or the river course. This here is, look at that, Euphrates and the Tigris. But you can see that this is a little bit away from it. Why aren't there big cities within this Euphrates and Tigris delta at this time? Where are they? Can you see them? No. That's because it's very likely that conditions were different. There was a different way of interacting with the landscape, and people are living where they are. You could say, obviously, that, you know, these two major sites, Halan Kemi and Kayono, are on the Tigris River. But if you start to look, Çatalhüyük is near a lesser river, and Asikli Hoyuk is actually near a lesser river. And Shenandoah, lesser river, Jaramo, Zereba, all lesser rivers. So you start to think that there's something very, very different going on with what we're seeing with this wonderful depth of archaeological landscape. So another piece of their art And what I would like very much to do is look. If you look at Çatalhüyük and you want a dictionary or a Wikipedia entry, this is actually from Britannia, the book Britannia, you know, the encyclopedia. This is what this says about Çatalhüyük. A major Neolithic site. We're not going to call it Neolithic. We're not calling it Neolithic. The reason why we're not calling it Neolithic is because it's a lot more than Neolithic. So we forget that one. Do we use the word Chalcolithic? Now, I've mentioned the word Chalcolithic before. And Chalcolithic means between the stone and the Copper Age. Well, actually, we're not going to use that word either. Excavations 1961-1965 by the British archaeologist James Mallat have shown that Anatolia in these times, it says Neolithic times, was the center of an advanced culture. It uses the word culture, not civilizations, which I appreciate. And if anyone's going to mention that they're watching a current series on the Amazon, and they will mention that everything that I've said about the Amazon is actually now in this series, that is brilliant, because people usually accuse me of the other way round, that the series is on television. I do a lecture a few weeks later. Well, this time I'm on top. Now, the reason why I mention that is if the word civilization is used, that's a bit of an anathema as well, because anything could be a civilization, really. If it interreacts and there's stuff going on, that's a civilization. The people of Papua New Guinea, they might live where they live and they keep going. That's a civilization. Or is it a culture? So we're going to use the word culture, actually. The earliest buildings at Çatalhüyük, initially in 1961, were tentatively dated to about 8,700 years ago. And evidence depleted around 7,650 years ago. But the problem is this was in the 1960s. Since then, we've added a date to the beginning. This is a prediction. Dates at Çatalhüyük will go a lot earlier than we are giving today, no matter what dates I give you. And also they will find another site within Turkey that is far older than Çatalhüyük, that is as advanced as Çatalhüyük. Mark my words, because Çatalhüyük was founded in the late 1950s. So that's not a long time in archaeology. We've known about Thebes and Karnak for 200 years or more. You know, we've known about these places. We've known about the Minoan Palace at Knossos since the 1890s. So in regards to archaeology, Çatalhüyük is a teenager on the block. The inhabitants lived in rectangular mud brick houses, probably entered from roof level. Now, when I actually thought about this roof level thing, I started to think about Pueblo Bonito. That's only about 1,000 years old. I thought, well, actually, what if it rains? Because they can have heavy rains in Turkey, and then the water goes into the building, it fills up with water. What's the solution? We'll tell you what the solution is in a while. So if you read this, you think, right, a building with a street, building, flat roof, ladder to the roof, how do they get down? But no, that's not what's going on. Building alongside another building, alongside another building, no streets, a roof level here, roof level here, and then you've got another roof level over here, and there's another way of accessing the building. Down a ladder, but there's a different way of doing it. Inside these buildings, hearths, ovens, houses had platforms for sleeping, sitting, and working. Within these buildings, finding edible grains and oil-producing seeds and nuts, extensively cultivated animal husbandry. Excavations of the so-called religious quarters. Now, we're going to take this word away. So-called religious quarter produced a series of shrines with wall paintings of exceptional brilliance. But then we go into the text to say that actually lots of buildings had little shrines inside their houses. Household gods, but not the set religion that we're thinking of. And also what we do find is lots of walls inside these buildings are also painted. So there's no differentiation between status, men, women, children, and what have you. So if anyone's just sent me a message, for some reason I can't read it, so I'm sorry. So let's look at a few messages. A few messages. See, messages coming up. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Right, so what we've got these painted walls inside these buildings. Now, these are the excavations from the 1960s. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at this image, and then we're going to go back to this. So if you can imagine, now there are 18 different phases of building here. This is the more latest stage. So if we want to take a note, we took at 9,500, by around 7,000 years ago, not 7,000 years ago, by around 8,000 years ago, the site is really being abandoned. So between 1,000 and 1,500 years ago, the site is occupied. These people live just along, there's no streets, nobody can get away from each other. So if we do a little bit of a reconstruction, so if we put beams across this roof, and Henry's just sent me a message, which it's Dell, it is. Thanks, Carl. I have seen all this. Oh, thanks a lot, Dell. It's fine. Don't worry about it. That was really useful. So what we do, we put beams across here. Yeah. And what we do, we have other beams across here. And we put other beams across here. So what we might do is have a ladder which goes from this level to this level. And then what we might do is have a little bit of a hood here, and we might have a little doorway going into it. Or we might, as with the illustration, seeing a much wider building. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you think about access, it's along the roof, up to here, going up this ladder, up to here, down here, then you go back down again, across this roof line, back down again, across here, then you go across here, then you go up here, then you go up down the ladder, go down here, up here again. So this is the landscape. The street, the plaza, the accessible area is actually on the surface of the buildings. This, for somebody that's done access analysis, this is quite easy. You go into a building, you go out, and then you're walking on top of other people's buildings. So what we're going to do is keep that there. And I would like to throw something else at you. And what this something else is Turkey Neolithic life at Çatalhüyük. Now, sometimes assessing human impact on the environment can feel like a uniquely modern obsession, but it is not that way. These people were very aware of their impact on the environment and how they fitted in with the environment. Thinking that we are the only people who've actually cared about the environment is not true. A great deal of research at this site is devoted to how people interacted with and adapted to their environment in prehistory and throughout, I would say. Understanding of how they managed animals and plants as food and fuel resources, or exploited the landscape for craft activities such as pottery production, is key to our perceptions of this period and key to how we see our own period in how we use our resources and how we interact and have deep intercourse with each other. The ways in which archaeologists seek to answer these questions has become increasingly sophisticated. And why has that become sophisticated? Due to advances in scientific technology. And since the 1960s, we know so much more about the site by looking at microarchaeology. Now, today, if you look at this figure behind me, right, I did this a little bit later, and take this very serious. It's not a joke now. So people would have handled this statue. Yeah, and by understanding what this statue is about, in the future, we will be able to trace people's DNA to who actually touched it. Now, if people want to think that this is a religious object and it's just associated with women, then we're going to be able to trace female DNA on this statue. Yeah. We're going to also realize whether there are libations being placed over the statue. There'll be lactic acids. and various other acids associated with liquids, libations, various oil acids and so on, which have been poured on this statue if it's religious. We might be able to work out that somebody might have kissed this object, kissing the breast, the knees, or other parts of the body to indicate that it's got a religious significance. Now, all those things and what this thing is about will be understood, like everything with this culture. They're really getting close to actually putting flesh on the bones of these people, almost hearing an echo, not just a postcard of the past. We now know, and I will go on to this, that we're seeing that they're able to excavate millimeter thick layers to work out what people were depositing in a midden spoil heap on a single day. Be able to work out their last meals. We'll be able to work out, I know, we'll be able to work out if people are having sexual intercourse at a certain time of day and all these other things. This is how fast the technology is coming around. It really, really is. And when you get to the end of these set of notes that I got in front of me, it goes at the end, this is only the beginning of our research into the site. And I'm thinking, blow me, Christ almighty. What I'm going to do, I'm going to read these messages. I've got a load coming in. So let's see. Dell had to come back and forth, he said. He's been to this site, good old Dell. And actually, do you know what? I like Henry, and it's really good that you guys have been with my classes for a long time, because you actually start to know how I think. I'm giving you one interpretation. It could actually just be art. And why not? Unfortunately, archaeologists get so anal. They find something and they need to have every single piece of interpretation. So say, for example, you're wandering across a field and you find a flint arrowhead and you think, oh, bloody hell, this is evidence of a battle, or it's evidence of a massive hunt, or it's evidence that people lived here and it's this and that. It could easily, but somebody went across a field and just tossed this thing aside and didn't want it anymore. You know, we really overdo it. But what we can do is understand the very pages that make up this site by the microscopic energies that the archaeology is actually helping us understand these past people. The microscopic and geochemical methods to examine archaeological deposits at a high resolution. This enables clues about the past to be detected that were missed by traditional archaeologists. Archaeology that have been missed at a naked eye level. Now, I remember a while ago, we were looking at a site on the island of Rousey. And when we were looking at this site on the island of Rousey, they were excavating a chambered site. And they had found evidence of Pictish activity in about the 500s. And they couldn't work out what certain stones were. Anyway, they got a magnet on site and they started to pick up little bits of metal. And they started to get into the microscope and they worked out that one of the buildings they were looking at was a smithy. Was actually a smithy. It was absolutely brilliant. That's because they were using advanced technology that we get today. So I wanted to keep away from the word Neolithic because it almost makes you think differently. So if my notes say Neolithic and Chalcolithic and various other things, but I want to stay away from that. So people were at the site for over 1,000 years, and this site itself could be classed as a settlement that could be one of the earliest urban centers on the planet, which is quite a big title. If you think about 5,000 people living there, between 5 and 10,000 people, give or take a few here and there, that's the population and the people who live in Lantup Major today. And that's over a sprawled area. And people don't sort of live back to back there. But this site that we're talking about, the area of the site that we're talking about is 50 acres in area. The area of the hill fort at Maiden Castle with a population of over 5,000 people. The archaeology there is unprecedented in the level of preservations, resulting in a wealth of artifacts and materials that can be investigated using cutting-edge techniques. Now, Çatalhüyük may have been founded in the late 1950s, was only being begun in the 1960s. And the archaeologist James Melhart said of the archaeology, the magnificent paintings, he said of the famous mother goddess statue behind me, now pride of place in the Ankara Museum. The quantity, he said, and quality of artwork and symbolism is rare for such an early site, and emphasizes the existence of a thriving community subject to complex social organization. Well, this was what he was saying in the 1960s, but there's no evidence of complex social organization being found. And this is now the new century. Today, it remains a regional research focus and the focus of many archaeologists, including the very eminent Professor Ian Hodder and Lord Colin Renfrew. So if you go to the House of Lords, there's an archaeologist who's a lord. And he's off his head as well. These have concentrated on examining the origins of agriculture and domestication and the ways in which people had intercourse with the complex and changing environment. Life in miniature. Let's sort of move the images and radiocarbon dates. Nice. No, we're not doing them yet. So look at this. What we do see is a reconstruction of this site. So what are we talking about? Agriculture immediately around. What we are talking about is access into these buildings. Now, if you had access directly from the horizontal, when it rained, your house would become flooded. But if you had a hood on the roof, like a little porch, you could go horizontally, go down the steps into the building. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt, and you might be visiting Bob, your uncle, and Fanny, your aunt. So what you're doing is going across these roof levels. Here, you're going down here, then you're going back up here, you're going up here, you're going down here, you're wandering across there, and then you're going up here to this level. You might go up and more steps to this level, wander across here. Oh, Joe, I can see you. Do you want to come over for dinner? Then you take another route all the way back to the house. The point is, having people walking on top of your roof to get to someone else's house, you wouldn't be able to do that in a non-egalitarian society where everybody is equal. Non-equality means that I own something. You're not going on my roof. No access to anybody else's house. We're buggered. Egalitarian for over 1,000 years. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever worked out. I'm not a fan of communism or socialism, but if you want to look at an early example of communism that worked, it's this one. If Karl Marx could have seen this, he could have seen a society where men and women were equal. There was no status, there was no hierarchy, and people operated within this society, this culture for well over 1,000 years, proving that if you have everybody equal, that things can work. But unfortunately, equality doesn't last for long, and maybe after the length of time that this site was occupied, people started to think about themselves, and people started to think about ownership, and people started thinking about warfare and so on, that we don't have any evidence at this stage that the site of Çatalhüyük is actually being used. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen a film called The Gods Must Be Crazy. It's a mad film in the 1980s, and it's a film which goes on for nearly 2 hours about a glass bottle of Coca-Cola. Basically, the preface is that somebody flies over the Masamara tribal people, and they drop a glass bottle, and it makes a strange noise, goes through the air, and it knocks somebody on the head. And they go, oh, wow, we found a bottle. And for a while, everybody in the village is using this bottle. But somebody says, well, I want to use it for this, and I want to use it for that. And they all have a bit of an argument. And then the one guy who finds the bottle says that The gods must be crazy. Why have you given us this bottle? So he goes, the whole rest of the film is about this guy going to the end of the world and chucking this glass bottle into the sea, going all the way back to his village. Everything's fine, right? Because the Masamare people, the hardest thing that Masamare people know about is bone. They don't have flint, they don't have stone, they don't have anything like that. So bone, that's the hardest thing. So that film is a good demonstration of what this society was about. But this society lasted for a long, society, culture, civilization, whatever you want to call it, lasted for a long, long time. Dates. Bill, would you like to go out on a date with me? If you can give me a date of 9,269 years ago, I would be amazed. I would be in awe at you. And this is the archaeological excavation that we see about. There's two big sites at Catalhoyuk linked. There's Çatalhüyük East and Çatalhüyük West. Çatalhüyük East is believed to have been one kinship group, one sort of clan, tribe. No, not tribe. That you think of status and power, you think of that with clan. And then you get the West Çatalhüyük site, right? All within the sort of basic, if you look at Maiden Castle, you can think of one site here, one site there, basically linked together. That's all one Çatalhüyük. So the earliest dates that we're getting from Oxford so far, dates from 2013, and I think we've got much earlier dates now, is that Oxford University tell us that the earliest date that we have at Çatalhüyük for the buildings are 9,269 years before present. And when you think about the word before present, you've got to add 70 years onto those dates. And you've got a plus or minus 187 when you're looking at about the radiocarbon dates for the site. What's that in English? Well, radiocarbon dates, that radiocarbon date of 9,269 is accurate plus or minus to 187 years. So it's within 187 years of that date being accurate. And the other thing I said, before present began in 1950. Because that was the beginning of atomic testing, or when I know we saw the little boy go up in the 6th and 9th of August in 1945 in Nagasaki, Hiroshima, but the great testing was taking place in the 1950s. So, but when radiocarbon was invented, then it takes account of everything before that date. So you've got to add 70 years onto these dates. So that date could easily be close on 9,500 years ago that we first see the settlement developing at Çatalhüyük, all the way to the idea of the abandonment of the site, which is this date here. So if you add 2,000 years onto this date, so you can see 7269. If this site was abandoned, the site was only used for about 300 years, but we believe that it's very likely that there's people there for over 1,000 years anyway. But that's the earliest date at the top there. I'm going to see what other chat message we've got. Maybe communism worked in this society because society was less complex than today. Well, I half expected Anne to say that. Thank you very much. And but you are very right for saying that. Society is not very, society wasn't as complex back in the past as it is today. Or are you wrong on that? Because there were different threats and problems to people back in the day. You could be wandering in bloody woodland and you'd be ripped apart by a bear, for example, back then, but it wouldn't happen today. Well, you're probably right, actually, that it was less complicated because we wouldn't, I tell you what, right? Since the invention of computers, things have got much more complicated because, you know, I found actually sending postcards out to people instead of emails is a lot easier and quicker than actually sending an email, because I know it doesn't make sense, but it does. It means more meaning when you get a postcard, and you sort of put more focus into it. And I don't know anyway, but carrying on. Look at this. But what we are going to do, looking in, this is what Dell's harem looks like in Porthcawl. So I'm going to Carry on. Life in miniature. Excavations have acquired an impressive reputation for pioneering new scientific methods in archaeology and for bringing together large numbers of specialists to ensure that the various different categories of archaeological evidence are fully integrated. This approach ensures that the maximum information can be harvested from the abundant plant and animal remains, stone, tools, pottery, and human remains left evidence in the archaeological data, which is extremely extensive. And another point to be made, these people who lived within these buildings swept out these buildings on a regular basis. They cleaned them on a regular basis, right? So how are you going to find archaeological evidence of what they did in these buildings? How many times have you broken a glass bottle in the kitchen, right? And you think you've swept up all the glass, but there's always a little bit of glass hanging here and there. That happens with modern hoovers. This is what happened when they cleaned out houses. In between all those little gaps and all those little crevices, little bits of archaeological evidence have survived, helping us understand what they did in these buildings. Job done, Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. And the other thing as well is if we excavated the site of Skara Brae up in Orkney, and it wasn't excavated by Gordon Child in the 1930s, I would say. Wrong date, 1930s, Gordon Child. When Gordon Child excavated it, he excavated with the methods there. Now, there's rooms at Skara Brae that we don't know what were used for. Now, if he hadn't have excavated the sites, we'd be able to use this technology that we're using at Çatalhüyük to be able to find those little slithers of evidence to find out what individual things are going on in the rooms at Skara Brae. This is why modern technology is absolutely brilliant. And I would like to stop there, only for a quite short second, where Archaeology Company has got a plan to buy somewhere to organize an archaeological excavation, which will be owned by us. And we can use all these little techniques because there won't be any rush. We looked at a site on the weekend, but you know what? I'm not telling you anymore. So amongst the new techniques developed at the site is one called thin section micromorphology. It's basically microscopically excavating the archaeological evidence in regards to the building rooms that we're seeing and in regards to the middens that they're finding. Originally devised to study soil formation processes, the technique has been applied to archaeological sediments, which the University of Reading is actually using. The goal is to seek out telltale indicators of activities at the site, which are preserved at the microscopic level. Teasing out such traces, however, is not straightforward, and blocks of archaeological sediment must be collected in the field. Basically, what they do, they excavate and they excavate around a block of evidence, and they plaster cast around it, board underneath, take it to the laboratory, excavate in the laboratory with microscopes, take ages doing it, and you get that minutiae of archaeological evidence. And it's only by looking at the archaeological evidence in the laboratory can you possibly glean to understand what's going on with this site. In order to achieve this, to produce slides, these blocks being micro-excavated, deciphering microscopic, I like this bit, deciphering microscopic signals from individual events. So what we're talking about is we had Christmas, a bit of the wrapping paper got trapped under the cupboard, a little bit of wine was poured on the floor, crumbs went in a few cracks. By using the microscopes that we have today, we'd be able to understand something about what you did at Christmas last year by analyzing your house. It can be done. Your carpets contain lots of evidence which would be able to help us understand your daily activities. And this is what we can understand back in the past, even to a greater degree. Examining floor and wall surface under the microscope allows tiny fragments of plants, bone, craft debris, and other materials to be seen. Armed with such evidence, archaeologists are able to determine how space within buildings was used to a degree that would be impossible using more traditional techniques. Even such everyday tasks as wall plastering can be appreciated in a whole new way. Basically, In some buildings, there are hundreds of layers of basically fine layers of wall plaster. And we know that they were really house proud. That there's something saying here that they may have redecorated every year. So here we go. Everyday tasks as wall plastering can be appreciated in a whole new way. The house-proud occupants took pains to ensure living areas remain clean and fresh by applying hundreds of coats of plaster, each of those layers being able to be read, as we see with scrolls being found at the likes of Pompeii, charred, but we can read the contents of those scrolls. We can also read the contents of these walls, various layers of wash, and also various layers of art, year after year, hundreds of years after hundreds of years. Storage areas, however, were carefully tucked out of sight and thus treated accordingly. They have a rougher appearance due to part to being only plastered every few years. So when you're talking about plastering these walls every few months or every once a year, then the storage room being plastered every couple of years or whatever, you start to think, we don't do that in our own homes. How many times do you actually paint inside your house? Very rare, eh? Let's move on to a few more images. And I'm just going to see what what people are saying. Oh, here we go. Just reading in 2013, they found linen woven with flax. We're going to do that, Del. I know that. Please tell me if local, I may be able to subscribe monies. Our back bedum has bags of Christmas presents going back 4 years. Why do people send me these notes in the middle of a lecture? It makes no sense. Jessica, have you noticed my Bridgend lot are a bunch of utter numpties? Anyway, rubbish archaeology. Examination of floor surfaces has revealed. Oh, hang on. I mean, oh, yes, yeah, that's right. Rubbish archaeology. So we know that these buildings were cleaned out on a regular basis. Even under the microscope, traces of ash and dust are scarce and confined to specific areas within the buildings. Suggests that sweeping floors was a routine element of their inhabitants' chores. This is what they did. This is how they lived and worked. So if they cleaned out the inside of their homes, where did they put their rubbish and their fecal matter and so on? The stratigraphy of their middens is incredibly complex, and individual layers can be as thin as 100 millimeter in thickness. So you can't excavate that in the field. One trowel and the archaeological evidence has gone. So you've got to take this into a laboratory and you've got to use a scalpel to excavate. Each of these fine layers relates to a single activity, such as sweeping out earthen material, burning animal dung as fuel, or discarded broken basketry and then chucking it in onto the top of the midden. It is impossible to excavate such in the field, so they've got to take these blocks and excavate them inside a laboratory. Middens are generally described in archaeological literature as rubbish heaps, but these at Catalhoyuk are more than rubbish heaps. They're a resource beyond the resource. And actually, the rubbish heaps to the people of Catalhoyuk were actually a resource unto themselves. The Catalhoyuk middens were routinely quarried. So the people quarried their own shit and animal dung to see what's there. And they might actually quarry into the middens to actually spread it into the countryside or use that in some of the building blocks of the buildings. The surfaces of the middens themselves were often seen as a convenient place to set a fire, to burn other rubbish, leaving pock-marked signs across the middens of other activity. Middens are particularly important at Çatalhüyük. The inhabitants' desire to live in clean homes means that they are the best source of information to what's going on, containing plant and various vertebrate remains and invertebrate remains as well. Do you know what? I've read very little about invertebrates in any of the text involving Çatalhüyük, basically because it was impossible to go through it all. Microscopic scrutiny of midden matter has revealed a wide range of deposits, human waste being massively important. Human waste can tell us about people's health and diet, which we will go on to. Find a combination of methods, including scanning, electroscope, electron microscopes, makes it possible to distinguish between different fuels. So they were using fecal matter to burn. They were using at certain times of the year a certain brushwood to burn with, timber to burn with, animal dung to burn with, various other materials. So we can see when they're burning things and what they're burning seasonally. And all this is absolutely brilliant. Burnt material like ash is also perfect to radiocarbon date, but it contains a lot of evidence. For example, burning certain types of human fecal matter can be quite useful. Burning certain types of animal fecal matter can be quite useful. As long as it's dried out, it's a good burnable material. Microscopic fragments of materials that were incinerated can be seen, including the silica phytoliths from reeds and grasses. So the silicas and various other things can be seen. So the variety of fuels and their association with either hearths in buildings or bonfires in middens in turn gives a unique insight into the technological choices of these people. It really helps us understand what is going on. So what I'd like to do is, after the break, I'd like to get our hands into the shit and understand what that's all about. But what I'd like to do is look at a few images. So with all that already been said, how can we reconstruct what these buildings look like? How do we know it looked like that? Easy peasy. One, the walls from 9,000 years ago, most of them still stand to this height. One, inside bake ovens. Two, little platforms that people would have, I don't know, would have slept upon, used them as basis for ladders. Fact three. Fact four, we've got evidence of floors that would have had this interwoven, these interwoven reeds on the floor. Fact four. What's then happening is, as this room is abandoned, there might be all sorts of things lying around, all sorts of things all over the place lying around. And as the building starts to decay, all of this is then going to be sealed. So as the roof collapses directly on top of these layers, that seals in the archaeological evidence, which would indicate people lived there. And then what then preserves this archaeological evidence from the roof are more materials that have been deposited. Look up Harris stratigraphy and you'll understand the way that we're able to determine this. Look at that, there's evidence. What is there evidence for? Let's give it a good old tick box. Tick, tick. Pestle and mortar, tick. We got various grains on the floor, tick. We've got, what else have we got? We've got evidence of these masks on the wall, tick. Little niches, tick. We've got evidence of reed mats, tick. We've got evidence of storage containers, tick. You know, all of this has got evidence. Flooring, tick. Platform, tick. Roofing material, tick. Obviously evidence of material that would have been used for ladders. All of that can be reconstructed. Oh, and what's on the wall, tick. And they love their bulls, tick. So, you know, this isn't just a reconstruction. This is what it was. This is what it was like. I tell you what, wouldn't that be great? We'll buy one of them and we'll have our meetings in Porthcawl in them, and we'll hire it out to the Elvis Presley fans for the Elvis Presley Festival. Look at the excavation. Now they've excavated 18 phases of archaeological evidence. Chop chop. There we go. The mud brick walls, the adobe style walls, various different walls of various different buildings of various different times and periods, going back to 18 different phases. There it is. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do now is that, my God, we've managed it. I managed to talk. not for just under 1 hour. So what I'm going to just mention a few more images a minute, and we can do that. So there you go. These mud brick walls. This is the archaeological evidence left by the British archaeologist in the 1960s. It wasn't roofed over. Some deterioration, which is a bit of a shame, but nobody took responsible for the archaeology. But the Turkish government are really into their archaeology there now as well, which is great. And look, just think. Tell you what, the Turks don't care about their archaeology. They don't want to invest in their archaeology. They don't think about scientific advancements, anything like that. Look at that. A Turkish site, which is roofed over. They invite scientists from all around the world to excavate at the site. They got the funding to do the work. The level of preservation is ongoing at the site. They want people to visit this site. They publish. They're really proud of the archaeology. They display the very wonders of their archaeology in their museums. And I tell you what, there are very, very few sites in Britain that go to the level of preservation that the Turks have gone to in regards to this site. Hats off to the Turks. You do a lot better job with your history and archaeology than we do in Britain. And this site is naturally preserved and for everybody to see today. Do you know what? We in Britain used to be really high and mighty. We used to criticize other countries for the way they display and preserve their archaeology. And we just take HS2 and we just demolish our archaeological sites and destroy them wantonly. And in places like Turkey, they do an extremely good job of what they do, and hats off to them. And if it wasn't for the Turks and displaying their archaeology and loving it and having scientific investigation, which we really don't do on this level of British archaeology, we wouldn't be able to see this today. Ongoing work, ongoing excavations, and again, you know, there's so much more through the science that we can actually learn. And this is what Del showed me earlier on. The earliest known flax textile fragments, fabrics perhaps used to wrap the dead. They were carbonized. They were carbonized. Radiocarbon dates tell us that they date from 8,000 years ago. Let's give us a little bit more. Do you know what? When I finished reading the last bit after the break, it goes at the end. It says, you know, this is only the start, basically. Now, just think of this. Just think of this. And I know we've got the film about Çatalhüyük coming out next year, and they did an extremely great job with the excavations at Çatalhüyük. If they had the technology that we have today on the Çatalhüyük excavation site, the information that we would know about Çatalhüyük blows our minds today of what was found. But if we use modern techniques and had a new excavation at Çatalhüyük on the original ship, you'd have to put it all back there and all the rest of it in its original site. The amount that we could learn would be absolutely amazing. Now, this itself, they're saying, you know, lots of things about this. Now, you could think, well, in future generations, we might have the scientific technology to work out whether this fabric was actually used to wrap somebody who was dead, or whether it was used as an item of clothing. What item of clothing was it? Was it a woman or a man who wore that item of clothing? What age were they who wore it? We can, in years, we'd be able to tell all that. We are. It's coming, and we're getting there. It's a bit like this morning, for example, right? You know, we had a bit of a power problem in the valleys. I had to go out and try and sort it out, and I went to the petrol station to put some fuel in my car as well, and the morning class, it was like 10:25, and I thought we got to teach at 10:30. So I got the iPhone and I started the Zoom class, in my car. Now, would you think I'd be able to do that at the beginning of the year? No, right? That's technology. That's one demonstration of technology. What we'll be able to learn about this site in 5-10 years is going to blow our minds. Turkey have a record of violations of human rights. They have the death penalty also. To be honest with you, I don't really care, because we've got our own violations. We're talking about archaeology and heritage. The way they treat their archaeology and heritage is important to me today. not human violations and human rights. Why are people talking about things that are not really not relevant today? Now, what we do see at Çatalhüyük, for example, is we see that the site is, people are living in that area thousands of years after the main part of the site is abandoned. These are a few ceramic heads dating to around 3,000 years ago. Del, don't worry, we'll do questions in a minute, Del. You weren't the one talking about human rights.
Sorry, Carl and everybody. I have to go.
Oh, don't go, Del.
Oh, I looked you up on YouTube, but no, my son's come up. My wife's gone out to do whatever she does. My son has come home.
Okay. Are you doing coffee tomorrow?
To go.
No.
Right, Del, Anne's got a question for you quickly.
Are you doing coffee tomorrow?
Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm out with my brother tomorrow. We're doing Christmas shopping.
Okay,
and Del, one last thing I want to say, Del, right, is on my YouTube channel now, you can actually join my YouTube channel, not only subscribe, and you get special back of the scenes recordings and stuff. So go on to YouTube and join on that
lovely.
As well. Okay.
Oh, lovely, because I fall asleep with you. I'm in my bed and I've gone
to bed with Del.
And I fall asleep.
Oh, Del.
With Carl.
Okay, Del, I'll see you next week, darling.
No, I'm sorry. I've got to go.
Okay, lovely. Right, so on that note, you know what we're going to do? We're going to ask if we got any questions. Anyone got any questions, darlings? Good old little Del.
I haven't got a question. I was just sort of thinking, well, it is actually a question. I was thinking it shows really the problem of periodization on an international perspective. Each country has a different sort of evidence at different time periods, doesn't fit for each other. So I think maybe sort of comparing it to ourselves, it doesn't really help with analysing so much.
Obviously, the only way you can compare is not with using the periods. You can't compare. You can only do it by date, I think. Really.
I got a similar question like that because you know, I asked my daughter about that. I said, you know, how is it that the Iron Age was a different period in Africa than it was in, you know, our country? And she said, well, it is different for, you know, it is, like you said, pluralism, it is different in all parts of the world. But I think if you use that term Neolithic, I think it does make you think of farming, you know.
Yes.
So,
but it's entirely wrong.
And
When we use the word Neolithic in Britain, we've already got agriculture in the country, so that term's wrong anyway.
When archaeology is meant to sort of, you know, there's being pushed to sort of think on their own and not be confined to things that have already been set before, I think when you sort of focus on periodization, it sort of limits your perspective as well on a different civilization. But also when you mentioned about the art, it made me think about when we went to Carnbury in Cornwall, when we had that someone had an interpretation that because it was loads of flint arrows that it was a battle, and I said, well, it could have been ways of hunting, for example. It just shows how, you know, perspectives of things can give a completely different outlook.
Yeah, that exactly, completely different outlook. And obviously, you are really right. Okay, I need a break. So anything you want to say, Pat, quickly say it now. Henry, quickly say it now. And Bill, quickly say it now. And it's got to be relevant.
Oh, I'm fine. I think that was very good. Thank you.
Right, we'll have a 15-minute break probably. Anything you want to say, Bill?
I came in late. Are we talking about one civilization here?
Yes.
And have you any idea if I had any writings, what they call themselves?
No.
We haven't. It's one of those. But it is 9,000 years old, you say?
Well, 9.5 and counting, Bill. It's one of those that you're going to see an article in a few years' time saying 10,000 years ago. So it's one of those queer ones, and it's one of those things that Henry winds me up with every week. He's going to send me a thing saying, "Oh, actually, they've just found that they've got new dating evidence for Çatalhüyük going back a million years or something." You know, he always does it every week.
Well, there's so many sites to excavate, aren't they? They'll be there forever, I think.
That's the way. And Pat, anything, darling?
No, fine. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay,
Yes, Pat.
Andy, we're going to have a break now, and you guys can talk amongst yourselves, and I'm going to mute myself. Oh, one thing I want to say.
Yes, please do.
Bill, quick. We mentioned about the Lamblethian walk, another one on the 12th, because the one we had on Tuesday was really good.
Is it Tuesday, Carl?
Yeah, Tuesday.
I can't do Tuesdays.
Oh, bugger. All right, then.
Mornings I can't. No.
And I've just announcement, we've got the Chester trip in October, but you know about that. Anyway, I'll be back. I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Jess, did Rosemary go? Did Rosemary go on Tuesday?
I didn't go, and sadly.
Rosamond went, yes. Rosamond went.
Oh, good. Good. I meant to come, but I just can't get up that time in the morning unless I got to go to the doctors.
Being locked in gets you like that.
I'm not sleeping at night. I don't get up.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. I've had enough.
Yeah. I'm gonna have we'll have to decide what we're gonna do, whether we're gonna have coffee tomorrow or not. Dorothy's not gonna do it.
Oh.
And Dorothy won't be going tomorrow because she's a bit nervous about meeting up with people, and I'm not sure, but
Bill and I
it depends.
11 o'clock tomorrow would be all right at ASDA.
What'd you say?
Bill and I talked about ASDA at 11 o'clock tomorrow.
I was in Bridgend this morning and it was like a ghost town. It really was. Just a handful of people wandering around.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you want to leave it this week?
No, Bill,
What do you want?
next week. Let's go.
I'll come down. I want to go to Curry's anyway, so I'll be in Bridgend.
So if you and Pat and I could tell Monty.
Okay.
Well, okay. If what we saying? 11 o'clock in Asda's as usual.
As usual.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't want to stop you doing, just coming in and having a coffee and having a chat, I'd love to get Bill. I'd love to ask you to, if you could phone Robert and ask him if he wants to come out.
I can't possibly do that.
Why?
I'm with his phone number.
No, I'll give you his phone number. I can give you his phone number. It's just we need to talk to Robert about, whether we can do anything for him, really. Like, does he want to come to have coffee with us? Or is he interested in, I've got to try and get some...
I'm sure he'd respond to an invitation from a charming lady like you rather than me.
Well, apparently he doesn't like women phoning the house.
What?
No, he's told Carl he didn't. Well, he went bananas when Glenda phoned.
Oh dear. Well, he's got problems with his wife, hasn't he? His wife wasn't well at all. Has he got an email address or a text? Has he got a mobile number?
No. I got his landline number.
Ah.
Or I can, no, I'm just thinking it's probably best to give Rob a bit more warning, actually.
Oh.
One, 6, 5, 6. And then it's 6, 6, 2, 3, 6, 1. I've just sent it to you now.
What's that, Dan?
I've just sent you the text now of Robert Bell.
Now, okay. What are you? Ugh. You didn't come in this fucking house. Oops. Anne? Anne? Can you hear me?
Who's that? Carl?
Can you hear me?
Did you want to talk to Carl or me?
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I've just spoken to Robert now.
yeah,
He's okay, he's fine.
good.
So I told him where we meet. He didn't know himself. But he said, say hello to everyone, Merry Christmas.
Okay, good.
I'll it, okay?
He didn't say anything
He didn't
about.
say yes, he didn't say no.
Okay.
So
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Bill.
That's okay. You're happy now, yeah?
Yeah, because I can send him a letter now.
Yeah.
About doing him some. I'm gonna print off the notes for him every week.
Right.
And I did either post them or put them through his door. You know.
Yeah.
Because Carl said it's costing him too much to send.
Where?
In the post.
Well, he doesn't with us, does he? He sends it on email with us.
Yeah, but Robert hasn't got email.
Oh, right. Well, does Robert pay?
Yeah.
Does he? Oh, that's good of him, considering he doesn't do the courses, the classes.
Well, this has been the whole problem, because we've got Bill, we've got Robert, and Monty, and Dorothy has stopped paying now but they've all been paying, and receiving notes in the post.
Yeah.
But it's not satisfactory, really.
Well, if he's paying, you should have him.
Well, yeah, obviously. Well.
There we are.
Well, thank you for doing that, Bill. Because it's just difficult. I can write to him now. Did you say we meet every Wednesday?
Sorry?
Oh, so no, it's okay, because you told him we're there tomorrow.
Yeah, I told him.
Right.
Got the message.
So I can send him a note and just tell him that we probably be meeting there every Friday.
Yep. Mind you,
Jess can come if she wants.
Sadly, I've got uni tomorrow.
Come on, Jess, come and join us.
I'd love to. Maybe not if you do it.
Coffee, a large coffee is £1.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Asda. Yeah.
Ooh.
But it's in Bridgend. That's the only thing. You'd have to pay £5 to come over.
Oh, I travel back and forth past there anyway on a Friday.
Come and join up my harem, because I tell all the girls they are my social harem every Friday.
Oh, no, you don't go to Bridgend, do you? You don't go to Bridgend, Asda.
No, but I pass it, so it's literally. Yeah, I always stop off at that stop whenever I'm on the train, so it's no bother to me.
Oh, right. Okay.
Trains have been nice at the moment. They've been so quiet. No one wants to go on them.
So where'd you go then? Swansea?
Yeah, I go all the way to Swansea. I used to live there, but for first and second year, I lived with some right nightmares, and it got to a point where I had my tenancy cancelled due to bullying, etc. So I just sort of decided to stay at home. I know my people who I live with, my mum and all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very common, it's people don't realise, they don't realise.
It's especially when you're living away from home, even though we live so far, for me, you do feel lonely about it. And I've realised that I've not been the only one with that situation. Unis push you to sort of book your your accommodation really early. You don't really know these people, and you're saying, yeah, I'll live with them.
No.
And
I
then-
mean, the number of times, you know, Mari's moved, but of course she couldn't move in the first year. She couldn't move in the first year, but all this. Oh, actually, she was in hall all the way through. She was in hall all the way through. So
I liked halls though.
yeah, it was protected, you know, like, and
Yeah.
you had your cleaning done.
Yeah, that was nice. I always felt bad because my flat was always messy, so I always cleaned up. So by the time they came, there wasn't really much to do other than chuck the bins
you are
out.
good. You are good.
I am a bit of a, I like tidying for some reason. I find it therapeutic. If someone's
Yeah.
really annoyed me, I
Well,
imagine
yeah,
their
I
face
mean-
on the floor with a mop and like scrubbing really hard.
It is therapeutic. You're right. Because I know that Mari gets a lot of. She's on her own now, living on her own, and she finds the cleaning helps, you know. And
Yeah.
she got 2 cats, so she's cleaning, and they're not messy. Cats are not messy.
No,
but you know, trouble is, I think she's allergic to them. She's got real sinus problems, you know, sneezing, and I'm just wondering if she's allergic to them.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite
It could
common.
just be cats as well.
Yeah, it could be.
Because
one. So back for the next half, and we've got some other archaeological evidence in front of us, and I do believe you're looking at some bull's heads. Is that correct?
Yep.
Good.
Yes.
So what I'd like to do is talk about the disease and the health aspect of the society in Çatalhüyük, which we're going to go on to now. Diet and disease. Much of the organic material in middens can be identified as human and animal fecal matter. Feces are rarely the first thing people think of as important archaeological finds. I feel they're massively important, but if you've got microscopes, you can identify anything. For example, when we look at the site, when we look at the Hittite sites, we can work out from bowls on tables within tombs that they can work out the ingredients for a meal and how it was cooked and the temperature and what the meal was and all the rest of it, and they can reconstruct a full feast from the evidence, an authentic full feast of the evidence that you can actually see at some Hittite sites. Now, lots of people, when they chew their food, they don't digest everything. People who eat meat, most of the meat isn't digested. So by dissecting all that evidence, you can get an idea of their meals. You can get an idea how hot the meat or the vegetables or the pulses or whatever cooked at. You can work out the mixtures of food, and you can work out meals. And that's what you can tell from fecal matter, and that can give you an idea of diet health. And obviously you can work out whether they've got worms or they've got other health problems. So sheer volume of such material at Çatalhüyük, and its excellent preservation provides an important complement to other indicators of diet, such as animal, plant remains, such as people. You know, did men and women eat the same thing, and all these other things which we're looking at. It can be difficult to decide what species coprolites belongs to usually, but now because of the technology, we can really work out if that comes from a pig or that comes from a human, and so on and so on. It goes to say, doesn't it? Pigs live around humans because they like eating human feces, because human feces has lots of undigested proteins and carbohydrates in it. So that speaks for itself. So when you dissect fecal matter, which is 8,000–9,000 years old, you can get a real idea of the society. Talking very sensibly there as well, that the fecal matter could be the backbone of understanding the site. And like everything with Çatalhüyük, there's so much to learn. Reliance on seeds and bone fragments alone cannot provide clarity here. So fecal matter really tell us what's going on. And you know, you can work out so much from the various different bile acids and sterols, acids in regards to a human stomach, and the coprolites and so on, fecal matter. So under the microscopes, what you can see in the fecal matter is, you know, bits of undigested meat and flora and bits of bone, and you can find bits of cereal husks and seeds from species like hawkberry and so on and so on, and those parasitic eggs involving the various worms and so on that these people may or may not have had. And you can, and again, working out the differentiations of diet from one mound of fecal matter and so on to another mound can give you a good level across the site, and this is what they're getting. So microscopic and chemical techniques can also be applied to other contexts. So we have, for instance, often wondered whether plants and animal products were included as grave goods. It was said by our archaeologists in the 1960s that they may have been burying goods, you know, flowers and foods with them, but he couldn't prove it. But alongside the bodies, there were stainings in the soil. Nobody could understand what these stainings were. And it worked out that you know, a nice number of skeletons buried under the floors of houses showed evidence that they offered items to take into the afterlife with them. Funeral rituals, complex funeral rituals, for example. The use of these microscopic techniques, and I'm going to say it. So we've looked at all of what we're learning, but the use of these microscopic techniques is still in its infancy. So look at the amount of, I told you what you can use this technology for, but it's still in its infancy. You know, me talking about that statue earlier on and so on and so on. Other than working out the names of these people, you can very much learn anything. And we can expect further exciting new information to come from them. For the time being, they have provided us with a unique glimpse of a population that competed to display so it might be a cleanly society, but in regards to their dead, and in regards to their burials, and in regards to the fragments left behind, and so on and so on, you can really help to understand what the site of Çatalhüyük was like. Watch this space. There's so much more we can learn from the site. So we know that aurochs are associated with a society, horns from aurochs, whatever this is, whatever they're portraying, the raised areas, the wonderful ways the walls are shaped across the mud bricks. And this is that figure. And there's a really intriguing description about this figure that if you look around the back, it outlines the skeleton of the individual, which is very odd. Now, this is described in the caption as a twin goddess marble statue at Çatalhüyük. Now, why does this make it a goddess? You know, that question. It's a nice little statue. Little stamp seals dating again back to about 8,000 years ago. Obsidian mirrors from Çatalhüyük. And more of this beautiful painting. Now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking that animal, the big one there, looks more like a moose, but it's described as an auroch. And these other animals down here, that could be a deer. And what you can see is that there's different colorations, some faded figures and some non-faded. So what we can indicate, what we know from this is there's layer after layer of different paintings showing different scenes. And I gotta say it, just because it looks very red, ochre, and very manganese oxide, black charcoal-y looking, there's no reasons to say that they actually didn't use organic paint, such as they may have pounded up leaves to create a green hue. They may have actually had blues, yellows, greens. They may have had lots of different colors. Because they're organic, obviously that's all just decayed and disappeared. So what else have we got in the chat now? Let's just see who else. Again, I can't seem to get any of this chat. Anyway, right, so what I'd like to do now is there's a little bit more I'd like to do. There's me. A little bit more. So on the backdrop of this, let's sort of conclude and let's see what other issues we haven't actually covered. So year goes nothing. So Çatalhüyük itself flourished. By my notes here, it was at its height 9,000 years ago. It was inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, July 2012, and it looks towards the twin cone volcano 87 miles away. Now that twin cone volcano and the plain in front of it is actually part of a painting that they found associated with the site of Çatalhüyük. And as I mentioned, it basically built around two sort of interconnecting mounds to the east and western settlement of Çatalhüyük. Now the archaeologist who I've mentioned, James Mellart, come across the site in the 1950s, excavating there 61-65. Now he has given us much of the buildings that we've seen and lots of the artifacts. He subsequently told us that there were 18 successive layers of buildings. Mellart was banned from Turkey for his involvement in the Dorak affair, in which he published drawings of supposedly important Bronze Age artifacts that went missing. So he was banned. So work didn't work there until the 1990s when Ian Hodder of the University of Cambridge undertook great excavations with now the Lord Colin Renfrew. This work itself has involved so many universities like Stanford, the University of York. They've had lots of funders, universities, for example, in Turkey, and even Cardiff University has been involved in the work. Catalhoyuk will always be seen as a network of buildings that are all back to back. So domestic buildings back to back with no obvious public buildings. So we're looking at populations at the site between 5,000 and 10,000 people. Yeah. We might think about the Western and Eastern settlement as being two different kin groups that they might intermarry or trade between each other, but trade is a lot more wide-ranging out of Çatalhüyük. The mud brick buildings, sort of a honeycomb-like maze when you think about the roofs, and obviously the ceiling opening is both the entrance, the exit, and the light, and this is where the smoke is actually exiting. But if you look at that early image, if you've got a little bit of a hood on the roof, it might actually offer the ability to have more light going in there. So we know that the rooms were scrupulously cleaned. We've got a good idea as part of rural ritual life, I would say. It's not rural ritual life. The people of Çatalhüyük buried their dead within the buildings. I've mentioned this occasionally today. So human remains have been found inside the buildings where they lived, beneath particularly the halves of these rooms. The bodies were often placed into, wrapped in reed mats. And there is also evidence that when they've excavated in some buildings, the bones are disarticulated and they're not all there. It's likely that the bodies were exposed, sky burial. So they may have practiced both inhumation and sky burials within their buildings. So there's lots of contemporary sites, including the massive contemporary site of Jericho, which would, like the other sites in the Fertile Crescent, would have provided great trade objects. Now, what I wanted to say is the following, which sort of agrees and disagrees with what we've been looking at. Vivid murals of figurines are found throughout the settlement on interior and exterior walls. Distinctive clay figurines of women, notably the seated woman at Çatalhüyük behind me, have been found in the upper layers of the site, although we've got no identifications of temples. Were they associated with little house worshipping with shrines. We don't know. Other representations on walls indicate hunting scenes, the auroch, stags, vultures swooping down on headless figures. Maybe that might represent the excarnation. And men with absolutely huge erect phalluses. So men are represented on the walls with their huge phalluses, and the men are represented in these figurines. So there you go. We do see the heads mounted on the walls, and I mentioned earlier on a painting of the village with the twin mountain peaks of Hassan in the background. Is frequently cited as the world's oldest map and the first landscape painting. Some people have disagreed, but isn't that great that we might actually find an early form of a map? That is absolutely fantastic. Now, a striking feature of Çatalhüyük, as we've already mentioned, is its female figurines. Mellart, the original excavator, argued those well-formed, carefully made figurines carved and molded from marble, blue and brown limestone, schist, alabaster, made out of clay and fired. These all represented a female deity, the first guy who excavated the site, Mellart. But we do see representations of women. Up to that again, we do see representations of men, but the representations of women outdo the representations of men. Now, I'm not really sure that this is to do with any kind of god or goddess. What am I to say? But the archaeologist Hodder has given another point of view. So a professor from Cambridge has given another point of view. So that's what we're going to do. He says in his own words, he says when he started working there, he believed that the mother goddess did not represent any major worship of a mother goddess as described by Mellart. He said as follows, a more simpler way of representing these female figurines and figures and so on. There are full breasts on which the hands rest, and the stomach is extended in the central part. There is a hole in the top of the head which is missing. Now, that figure itself, that's the head on it. The head on top is actually a replica. The rest is the original. As one turns a figurine around, one notices the arms are very thin. And then on the back of the figurine, one sees a depiction of either a skeleton or the bones of a very thin and depleted human. I've never seen an image of the back of this. It would be great if I could, but I haven't been able to find one. The ribs and vertebrae are clear, as are the scapula and the main pelvic bones. The figurine can be interpreted in a number of ways, as a woman turning into an ancestor, as a woman associated with death, or as death and life conjoined. It is possible that the lines around the body represent wrapping rather than ribs. Whatever the specific interpretation, this is a unique piece that may force us to change our views of the nature of Çatalhüyük society and their imagination. Perhaps the importance of female imagination was related to some special role of the female in relation to death as much as to the role of mother and nurturer. So are we talking about a matriarchal or a patriarchal society? Or are we talking about just representations of figures? It was a very, very awkward and difficult question. Now, as we really get on to the end here, I want to talk a little bit about economy, which will give you a last stab. Çatalhüyük has strong evidence of an egalitarian society, as no houses have real distinctive features belonging to somebody of any kind of aristocracy. The most recent investigations also reveal little social distinction based on gender, with men and women receiving equivalent nutrition and seeming to have equal social status in the form of burial and whatever we see. Children observed domestic areas. So I think I've worked out what that sort of means. It sort of means that they were all similar in stature, the ones that have been found buried, And obviously they were all involved in the sort of same tasks and are probably learning what their parents did as well. Çatalhüyük's spatial layout may be due to the close relationships of the people. So a large family grouping getting bigger and bigger, obviously, as things develop. We think then in the more upper levels of the site coming closer to us. So obviously as time goes by, coming towards 8,000 years ago, what we do see is that there's more and more reliance upon cereals such as wheat and barley. There's more and more of these figurines. We know that by that stage, peas, almonds, pistachios, and fruit are being harvested. Sounds like a good diet to me. Sheep were domesticated, as well as lots of evidence of cattle domestication. Hunting and gathering, naturally, varieties of different food. Pottery and obsidian tools appear to have been major industries. So pottery, you know, a long time before we get a ceramic culture in our country, but it might be due down to the survival of our objects that we're not really detecting it at this stage here. But it's really, really unlikely because there were no settlements 9,000 years ago in Britain. We do see trade objects such as flint and shells, and obviously the pottery, obsidian, and so on. And I remember asking this question that I've got an answer to in front of me. The question was, why is there never a lead age? You get copper, you get Chalcolithic period, which is a copper age. You got Bronze Age, Iron Age, but why isn't there a lead age when lead is so important? Why isn't there a tin and zinc age? But that's something else. This is interesting. There is also evidence that the settlement was the first place in the world to mine and smelt metal in the form of lead. So there you go. We've got a lead age, just identified it. A lead age identified at Çatalhüyük 8,000 years ago. So basically, if you want to go back to those periods, you can think Mesolithic, Neolithic, lead age, something else, and then it starts to move on, Chalcolithic period, Bronze Age, Iron Age. Noting the lack of hierarchy and economic of economic control, Çatalhüyük could be classed as a proto communist society, an early communist society. It could be argued that maybe much later on, people moved away from the egalitarian sense of the community and started looking at social inequality, i.e. you start to see the emergence of aristocracy and people who controlled others. And then you probably start to see wealth being generated and built up and so on. So people at that stage probably thought, right, we're going to move away from the site, and that is the way we're going to go. And on that note, we're going to more or less call it a day, because that's what I need to say about this today. So here we go. So looking again back at the original image, more of these paintings, back again, obsidian mirrors, all these wonderful figurines, wonderful culture, more of these as we've already seen. And just going back to the radiocarbon dates, giving us a good idea of the site and these remains. So what we're going to do, we're going to call that a day now. Can I have some questions? Patricia?
Shall I go?
Oh, go on, Anne.
I was just sort of thinking, you know, the whole, when I said about the complexity of communism, it reminded me a little bit of like direct democracy in ancient Greece. It seems logical to do, seems easy, but when you have more, like it gets more politicized nowadays to a point where it gets so complex that no one's got time to sort of, you know, do things themselves. It's left to other people, which creates, you know, a hierarchy, and then, you know, it leads to corruption. So that's why probably it couldn't work today.
I agree. But then again, do I agree? But you know, even with democracy and the corruption in the presidential elections in America, you can clearly see that a democracy doesn't work either. So what is the answer? And you know,
well, democracy is still in its early stages if you think about it.
It is. People vote in elections in America, and their votes ain't even counted. And I've actually stood for office, and I've been standing there, and I've seen ballots for me disappearing. That's democracy. I've seen it myself.
It's like a lot of scholars and academics, when I was thinking back to what I've done in my past degree, they said that because it's so early on, we can't really sort of have so much knowledge from past sort of regimes, that, you know, we're still figuring it out, and there's going to be a lot of hiccups, I think, for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. These people managed to get a society working for 1,000 years. We can't get our own democracy worked out. You know, if we look, for example, we can have a situation, what was it, in 2016, where a political party can get 4 or 5 million votes and not a single MP. And yeah, I'm not actually, you know, I'm not one who passionately agrees with democracy, to be honest with you, but that's me. Right, Pat.
I enjoyed it. I've never heard of it before, so it's all new. Very exciting. Thank you.
All new is good. All new. I like that. Anne, let's have it from you, babe.
I got one little chapter from this People of the Earth book.
Oh, bloody hell, don't read it all out.
No, it just says, we know there was a duality between male and female, some form of divine family personified, perhaps, by two deities, mother-daughter, a great goddess, and a lesser father-son, her paramour. So it was like, you know, that was said by Mel Art, that there was a duality. Oh, it's gone.
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
That's it. Just, you know.
You're Descartes of Mellart. Descartes. Oh, right. Okay. Henry.
Oh, that was very interesting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
I hadn't come across this before either. So I enjoyed it. I did send you a little link, as always, about an earlier site.
Göbekli Tepe. We actually gave a lecture on Göbekli Tepe a while ago, and unfortunately, we do have radiocarbon dates on Göbekli Tepe, but they're not as accurate as the radiocarbon dates here, so it's a problem. But right. I go along with the Göbekli Tepe. I go along with the Göbekli Tepe sort of chronology. I like what they've done there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to put my Göbekli Tepe link on the chat box. Bill, you're the last one.
Well, I missed the first archaeo, as you know. This Fertile Crescent, it covers a huge swathe of land, doesn't it? From modern day Turkey, Iraq, down to Israel, etc. Has there been enough excavation carried out to establish a common culture and connection between all these various cities and towns? Or that's ongoing? It must be ongoing.
Well, yeah, there is.
To be honest with you, when you say there is, it's just like, well,
like everywhere.
You can't to have a common culture. There's so many things going on across the region. Having a commonality is not really possible. It's the same when we look at Europe. When people signed up to go into Europe in 1974, they basically said, we're all going to be the same. And then somebody said, well, what about the languages? What languages are we going to speak? Oh, what are we going to trade with? What's our priorities going to be? Are we just going to have one army? Are we going to have one money and all the rest of it? And that's looking at the modern day and age. It couldn't work with us. So
So these were separate. These were separate tribal groups, basically.
Yes.
Politically separate as well.
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah.
Exactly. I put the video down there for Göbekli Tepe. Just cut and paste it now before we finished. My Göbekli Tepe video is the other site that would be earlier than this one.
Carl?
Yeah, go on.
You mentioned the newsletter last week?
Yes, I did. I did mention the newsletter last week because my secretary, her family's got COVID. We're just basically we've not been able to get these things sorted.
Will it be out before Christmas?
It will be out before Christmas because we've got another one that is behind it.
Okay.
We've actually, yeah, we're back to back now, and that's the problem.
Okay.
So right. So what I'm gonna do is anyway. Thanks for that. So I will be seeing everybody tonight, and I'm gonna get my head down for an hour. So anyone want to ask anything else? Next week we're going to be looking at China.
Oh, good.
Which bit?
It's like next week we're going to be looking at the world. Now I've got a certain area of China I want to look at, so I just need to see if it's plausible.
It's a pity Monty isn't with us. He could have got us straight, you know, about the. Actually, we could have told him there was life before 3,000 years.
Oh, shut up! Don't get that started. Right? Okay. So, as I say, reminder: the 12th of January, we got Llanblethian Walk. We've got the Christmas lectures that which we're going to be sorting out. Jessica, I will need to speak to you tomorrow and sort out something, and I will see everybody tonight. So if nobody's got anything else to say, make sure you take that link down now off the screen. You've got a minute to do it.
How'd you do it?
You put your cursor over it.
Select all, yeah.
And you say copy.
Oh, it doesn't got copy. Oh.
Right, no, above your select all of the word. Right, okay. Go on to my YouTube channel, right, which is Carl J. Langford. Go on to my YouTube channel and you'll see.
Tepe.
Right, I'll tell you what. I will share my YouTube channel now. Hang on a minute.
Tepe. Oh, it's all right. I'm
going to share it anyway, just for you. Just for you. I'm going to share.
Oh, go back. Oh.
Right. That is my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Right. So don't forget to join my YouTube channel now and subscribe.
Yeah.
And basically, if you go down, you've got my most popular video there, Erotica of Rome, which has got 56,000 views. And you've got Göbekli Tepe Lost Civilization. You've got that at 9,000. So click on that one.
All right, don't worry. I'll sort it out.
All right, then I'm gonna come back to the screen, and we will all say, hang on, let's stop the sharing.
Good night.
We will. Right. Okay. Göbekli Tepe Lost Civilization. Look up my video and watch, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, on that note, thanks for joining me today. It's been a good one. So Pat, Jess, Bill, and Henry, either see you tomorrow or either see you next week. Good night. Arrivederci. Night.
Enjoy.
One last thing.
Next
week's lecture will be the last live one before Christmas.
I'll try and see you tomorrow, Pat.
Right.
Take care, hermaphrodites, men, women, and whatever.
And anyone who wants to come at 11 o'clock, Asda.
Yeah, we'll all be there, including that woman behind, naked.
Oh, bye.
That reminds me of you, Anne.
Bye for now.
She's got. Oh no, she's got an A cup.
I was going to mention.
I'm a D cup.
Alien spacesuit. Well, someone had to say it. Dell's not here.
And how can that be an A cup? It's surely like something else. Oh, she's gone. Good. I'm glad she's gone.
Right.
Bye
Anyway,
bye. I'll see you next week. Oh
yep.
God. Right. Yeah.
Carl.
Hang on.
You know you want to speak to me tomorrow.
Yeah.
What time are you thinking? Because I finish at 1 p.m. tomorrow.
Oh shit! Right, yeah. I just realised I got the car MOT. Yeah, I'll phone you from the car garage at yeah, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I've almost finished with preparing
Good.
the lessons. Perfect. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Okay, I'll speak to you soon.
See you later anyway.
See you later. Take care.
Take care.
Bye bye. Bye bye.